He was the boogeyman of California, a spectre haunting the state for over a decade. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr., the man who would become known as the Golden State Killer, cast a long and terrifying shadow. From the quiet suburbs of Sacramento to the sun-drenched streets of Southern California, nowhere felt safe. He moved like a phantom, striking fear into the hearts of families, his crimes escalating in brutality with each passing month. His victims, chosen seemingly at random, were united by their terror, their lives forever scarred by their encounters with the man they called the Golden State Killer. But the darkness, as it always does, eventually gave way to light. The Golden State Killer's reign of terror began in the summer of 1974. He started as a prowler, a peeping Tom lurking in the shadows, his presence heralded by the unsettling scrape of a shoe on concrete. His crimes escalated quickly, from voyeurism to break-ins, each act emboldening him, fueling his dark desires. Then came the attacks, brutal and brazen, leaving a trail of fear and devastation in their wake. His victims, primarily young couples and single women, were subjected to unimaginable horrors. He would bind, torture and rape them, his voice a chilling whisper in the darkness. Each attack was meticulously planned, executed with a chilling efficiency that spoke to a disturbed mind obsessed with control. He became known as the East Area Rapist, his name whispered in fear, his crimes becoming increasingly violent, pushing the boundaries of human cruelty. The people of California were living in a nightmare. The police were working tirelessly to catch him, but he was always one step ahead, a ghost disappearing into the night. The Golden State Killer had cast a pall over the California region, and no one knew how to stop him. As the East Area Rapist, also dubbed the Night Stalker, continued his reign of terror, investigators struggled to connect the dots. His crimes spanned a vast geographical area, leading them on a frustrating and fruitless chase. The methods, while disturbingly similar, had subtle variations, making it difficult to definitively link the cases. Law enforcement agencies across jurisdictions struggled to share information effectively, further complicating the pursuit of the elusive criminal. The pressure mounted with each passing day as the body count rose. The media, hungry for any scrap of information, sensationalized the crimes, turning the Golden State Killer into a mythical figure. But within the darkness, a faint glimmer of hope emerged, a single thread that would eventually unravel the entire tapestry of his crimes. The Golden State Killer's modus operandi was a chilling blend of meticulous planning and impulsive brutality. He would stalk his victims for weeks, learning their routines, their vulnerabilities. He would case their homes, disabling porch lights, tampering with windows, creating easy access for his intrusions. His crimes were rarely crimes of opportunity. They were orchestrated assaults, each detail meticulously planned to maximize terror and control. He often entered homes well before the attacks, disabling phones, gathering restraints, and laying out the tools of his horrific trade. He would often take mementos from his victims' homes, trophies of his depravity, constant reminders of his crimes. His attacks were brutal and dehumanizing. He would bind his victims with shoelaces, cords, even clothing, tying elaborate and cruel knots. The Golden State Killer's crimes were more than just acts of violence. They were psychological warfare. He didn't just want to control his victims' bodies, he wanted to control their minds, to break their spirits. He would make his victims recite phrases, forcing them to participate in their own degradation. He would make them promise not to move, threatening further violence if they disobeyed. These threats, often whispered in their ears, lingered long after the physical assault was over. He would often make phone calls to his victims after the attacks, taunting them, reminding them of their helplessness. These calls, filled with chilling silence and heavy breathing, were a constant reminder of the terror they had endured. The psychological impact of his crimes on his victims was profound and long-lasting. They lived in constant fear of his return, their homes no longer sanctuaries, but reminders of the horrors they had endured. The Golden State Killer's reign of terror extended far beyond his immediate victims. It held entire communities hostage in a grip of fear. This unknown assailant committed over 120 burglaries, 51 rapes, and 13 homicides from 1974 to 1986. His variety and scope of practice covered most of Southern California, spawning numerous aliases created by the media. His presence in the shadows created an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion, wondering if the monster lived among them, hidden in plain sight. Parents kept their children indoors, once vibrant neighborhoods transformed into ghost towns after dark. The fear became a shared experience, a collective trauma that bound communities together in a way no one could have imagined. The fabric of these communities was torn apart, the sense of safety and security shattered. The Golden State Killer had not just terrorized individuals. He had terrorized entire communities, leaving behind a legacy of fear and mistrust that would take years to heal. The investigation into the Golden State Killer was a long and frustrating one, fraught with false leads and dead ends. The vast geographical scope of his crimes, coupled with the lack of sophisticated forensic technology at the time, made him a particularly elusive target. Police received thousands of tips, each one meticulously followed up on, only to lead to another dead end. Composite sketches based on eyewitness accounts varied wildly, further muddying the waters. The lack of a centralized database for sharing information between jurisdictions hampered the investigation, allowing the killer to stay one step ahead. The pressure on law enforcement mounted with each passing day, the public demanding answers, demanding justice. The investigation dragged on for years, the case files growing thicker, the trail growing colder. A glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness in the early 2000s with the advent of DNA technology. Investigators, revisiting the cold case files, discovered that DNA evidence collected from several crime scenes matched, confirming their long-held suspicion that the East Area rapist and the original Night Stalker were one and the same, the Golden State Killer. This breakthrough breathed new life into the investigation, providing a crucial link that connected the seemingly disparate crimes. With renewed determination, investigators entered the DNA profile into national databases, hoping for a match. Years passed, but the DNA remained silent, offering no matches, no clues to the killer's identity. The investigation, while reinvigorated by the DNA evidence, seemed destined to remain unsolved. Another cold case file gathering dust. They knew that the DNA held the key to unlocking the mystery, to finally putting a name and a face to the monster who had haunted California for so long. In 2018, after more than 4 decades of eluding justice, the Golden State Killer's reign of terror finally came to an end. Investigators, using a novel investigative technique called genetic genealogy, were able to track down Joseph James DeAngelo Jr, a 72-year-old former police officer living a seemingly normal life in Citrus Heights, California. The news of his arrest sent shockwaves through the nation, a collective gasp of relief mixed with disbelief. Could this unassuming grandfather really be the monster who had haunted their dreams for so long? The arrest was the culmination of decades of tireless work by dedicated investigators, driven by a relentless pursuit of justice for the victims and their families. The use of genetic genealogy, a groundbreaking technique that compares crime scene DNA to publicly available genealogy databases, proved to be the key to unlocking the mystery. The arrest of Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. marked the closing of a dark chapter in California history, but it also served as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the most elusive criminals can be brought to justice. The capture and conviction of Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. brought a sense of closure to the victims and their families, but the scars of his crimes run deep. The Golden State Killer's reign of terror left an indelible mark on the psyche of California, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. The case also highlighted the importance of DNA technology in solving crimes, particularly cold cases, offering hope to those who have waited years, even decades, for justice. The legacy of the Golden State Killer is a complex one, a tapestry woven from threads of fear, resilience, and the enduring pursuit of justice. His crimes serve as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of innocence, of the randomness of violence, and the profound impact that criminal acts can have on individuals, families, and entire communities. Yet, through the darkness, glimmers of hope emerge. The capture and conviction of Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. serve as a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of never giving up, and the enduring belief that even in the darkest of times, justice can prevail. Robert Lee Yates Jr. He looked so normal, an ordinary man living an ordinary life, a loving husband, a dedicated father to 5 children, a decorated veteran having served his country as an Apache helicopter pilot. He was the epitome of normalcy, blending seamlessly into the fabric of Spokane, Washington. Yet, beneath this veneer of ordinariness lurked a monster, a predator driven by a darkness so profound that it defied comprehension. Yates's split lifestyle was a carefully constructed facade, a mask he wore with chilling conviction. He was a phantom, moving unseen, unheard, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. His victims, often women on the fringes of society, became his prey, their lives extinguished in the most brutal and callous manner. Their families and friends, left grappling with the unimaginable, searched for answers in the desolate spaces left behind. The police, initially baffled by the seemingly random nature of the killings, soon realized they were dealing with a predator of the most cunning kind. The hunt for the killer, dubbed the grocery bag killer for his chilling habit of leaving his victims' bodies wrapped in plastic bags, became a race against time. Each new discovery heightened the fear that gripped the community, turning their quiet neighborhoods into whispers of suspicion and dread. As the investigation unfolded, a horrifying truth began to emerge. The man who coached Little League, who went to church every Sunday, who was a pillar of his community, was leading a secret life of the most diabolical deeds. He was a predator, stalking the streets of Spokane, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. And the more the police learned about Robert Lee Yates Jr., the more they realized that they were dealing with a monster far more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. The first whispers of fear began in the summer of 1996. A woman, Patricia Barnes, who frequently worked the streets, was found discarded near the Spokane River. Her body, bearing the marks of unspeakable violence, was a grim harbinger of the horrors to come. The authorities, initially attributing her death to the city's underbelly, remained oblivious to the storm that was brewing. As summer surrendered to fall, another life was brutally cut short. This time, the victim was a young woman, known to frequent the city's red light district known as Skid Row. Her body, like the one before, was found dumped unceremoniously, wrapped in the cold embrace of a plastic bag. The authorities, now facing mounting pressure, began to suspect a connection, a horrifying pattern emerging from the shadows. Fear, like a virus, began to spread through the streets of Spokane. The knowledge that a predator was stalking their city, preying on the vulnerable, sent chills down the spines of its residents. The once vibrant streets, now shrouded in an eerie silence, became a haunting reminder of the killer's invisible presence. The police, scrambling for answers, found themselves facing a cunning adversary. The killer, a phantom in the night mimicking the infamous killer Jack the Ripper, left behind no trace, no clue to his identity. The investigation, hampered by dead ends and fading leads, seemed destined to remain unsolved, leaving the families of the victims to grapple with the agonizing pain of unanswered questions. As 1997 dawned, the killer's appetite for violence grew, his macabre ritual becoming more brazen, more depraved. He targeted women from the red light district and those known for prostitution, but eventually branched out to random women in the wrong place at the wrong time. A waitress, struggling to make ends meet, vanished without a trace. A young mother, her life cut short on her way home from work. Each victim met the same gruesome fate, their bodies discarded like trash, wrapped in the killer's signature plastic shroud. The police, now facing a full-blown crisis, struggled to contain the rising panic. The media, sensing the public's growing fear, seized upon the story, dubbing the unknown assailant the grocery bag killer. The moniker, a chilling reminder of the killer's modus operandi, became synonymous with terror, forever etching itself into the city's psyche. The investigation, bogged down by a deluge of tips and leads, most of them dead ends, seemed to be making little headway. The killer, a phantom, moved through the city with impunity, his presence felt but never seen. His ability to evade capture, to vanish into thin air, only served to amplify the terror that gripped Spokane. The grocery bag killer, a spectre haunting their streets, had become a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic lives. And as the body count continued to rise, so too did the fear, casting a long, dark shadow over the once vibrant city. A community in fear, The shadow of the grocery bag killer looms. Fear became a constant companion to the residents of Spokane. Women clutched their purses a little tighter, their eyes scanning the streets with a newfound wariness. Shopkeepers, their faces etched with worry, locked their doors earlier, the usual bustle of commerce replaced by an unsettling quiet. The grocery bag killer's reign of terror had cast a pall over Spokane, transforming their once safe haven into a breeding ground for suspicion and fear. The fabric of their community, once woven tight with trust and camaraderie, began to fray at the edges, the shared terror threatening to unravel the very essence of their lives. The police, working tirelessly to catch the killer, found themselves facing an uphill battle. The case had garnered national attention, attracting a media frenzy that only served to amplify the pressure on the already overwhelmed investigators. Every lead, every tip, no matter how insignificant, had to be meticulously investigated, a daunting task that stretched their resources thin. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, a glimmer of hope emerged. The community of Spokane, refusing to be defined by the darkness that had descended upon them, rallied together. Neighborhood watch groups were formed, their members patrolling the streets, their eyes peeled for anything suspicious. Candlelight vigils were held in honor of the victims, the soft glow of the flames a testament to the enduring spirit of a community determined to reclaim their city from the grip of fear. Whispers turned to screams, the body count rises. The discovery of each new victim sent shockwaves through the community, the whispers of fear escalating into screams of terror. The victims, their lives tragically cut short, were more than just names on a police report. They were mothers, daughters, friends, their absence leaving gaping holes in the lives of those they left behind. But as more and more women turned up, wrapped in plastic and shot in the head, the pressure to find the killer built quickly. Fortunately for the police, one woman miraculously survived the encounter with the grocery bag killer. Christine Smith, the only known survivor who crossed paths with Yates, was abducted off the streets when soliciting sex. Yates patrolled the area, creeping slowly down the alley in his 1970s black van, and honed in on Christine. She entered the vehicle and would later tell police that he told her that he was a helicopter pilot for the National Guard and had 5 children. As the conversation moved to the back of the van, terror suddenly peaked. Bang! She was struck in the back of the head and, in a panicked hysteria, wailed, kicked and scratched her way free from his grips. With a throbbing head and no money after being robbed too, she stumbled into the local police office to report the assault. It was during her statement that a fragment was discovered in her hair. Christine had actually been shot and didn't realize it. Surprisingly, she was able to recall with amazing detail the man's appearance. His sketch was printed almost everywhere the next day. However, it would be an entire year before evidence and leads linked back to Yates, even though he had been suspected previously. In 1999, he was listed as one of a few hundred potential suspects who were wrangled up and asked for a blood sample. When Yates refused, police surveillance was initiated to watch his every move. When discovering his white Corvette matched the description of the car responsible for the homicide of Jennifer Joseph, they scrapped a sample of the paint and were able to match it. After 2 days, they compiled enough to get a warrant and arrested Yates in April of 2000. He would be sentenced to death, but in 2002 it would be appealed and rejected by the judge. Yates is still serving life in prison.
Los Angeles, the city of angels, a place of dreams, sunshine, and opportunity. But beneath the glittering facade, a darkness festered. A predator stalked the streets, preying on the vulnerable, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. This is the story of Chester Turner, the most prolific serial killer in Los Angeles history. For over a decade, Turner cast a long shadow over South Los Angeles, his crimes a chilling reminder of the vulnerability that lurked beneath the city's vibrant exterior. His victims, mostly women struggling with poverty and addiction, became tragic symbols of a city grappling with its own demons. He moved through their lives like a phantom, leaving behind a trail of grief, fear, and unanswered questions. But as the evidence mounted, one thing became horrifyingly clear. A serial killer was on the loose, and he was far from finished. Chester Dwayne Turner was born in 1966, growing up amidst the sprawling urban landscape of Los Angeles. Little is known about his early life, the details lost to the passage of time and the banality of evil that would come to define him. Some whispers spoke of a troubled childhood, of neglect and abuse, but the truth remained shrouded in mystery. He drifted into a life of petty crime, his rap sheet growing longer with each passing year. By the late 1980s, Turner had become a familiar face to the LAPD, his name synonymous with petty thievery and violence. But his crimes were about to take a sinister turn, escalating from petty offenses to something far more diabolical. The shadow that had always lurked within him was about to engulf him completely. The first confirmed victim was 28-year-old Diane Johnson, found strangled in an abandoned building in 1987. Her death, like many others in the area, was initially thought as a bad drug dealing gone wrong. Then came Alandra Bunn, a young mother found strangled in a vacant lot in 1993. Her body, like Diane's, bore the telltale signs of Turner's brutal method strangulation, the mark of his rage etched onto her skin. As the years passed, the body count grew. Regina Washington, found strangled in an alleyway in 1995. Her body left to rot in the unforgiving California sun. Paula Vance, discovered in a dumpster in 1998, her life extinguished in a moment of unimaginable terror. The LAPD, finally recognizing the pattern, formed a task force dedicated to catching the predator they dubbed the South Side Slayer. On a chilly December morning in 2000, a homeless man scavenging for recyclables made a gruesome discovery. In a narrow alleyway, nestled between overflowing dumpsters and discarded furniture, lay the body of 36-year-old Brenda Breeze. Brenda, a known drug user, had last been seen alive 2 nights prior, her usual haunt a stretch of rundown motels and liquor stores along Figueroa Street. Detectives arrived at the scene, their faces grim as they surveyed the gruesome tableau. Brenda's body was clad in the clothes she'd last been seen wearing: a faded denim jacket, a pair of too tight jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her purse, containing a few dollars and a crumpled pack of cigarettes, lay discarded nearby, a sign that robbery was not the motive. But one piece of evidence, a cigarette butt found near Brenda's body, would prove crucial in cracking the case. The forensic team, working meticulously, managed to extract a DNA sample from the discarded cigarette butt. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. The sample was entered into CODIS, the national DNA database, but no match came back. Meanwhile, the murders continued. Darlene Fearn, a 40-year-old grandmother, was found strangled in her apartment in 2002. Her death, occurring within walking distance of several other victims, sent shockwaves through the community. The Southside Slayer, it seemed, was becoming bolder, striking closer to home. Fear gripped the neighborhood. Then, in 2003, came a breakthrough. The DNA sample from Brenda Breeze's murder scene finally yielded a match. Margaret Jacobs, a woman hardened by years of struggling to raise her family in one of LA's toughest neighborhoods, refused to believe it at first. Her daughter, 37-year-old Janice, had been found strangled in a vacant lot in 2000. Her death, a devastating blow that had shattered their family. When detectives informed Margaret that they had a suspect in custody, a man named Chester Turner, she felt a surge of hope, a flicker of light in the darkness that had enveloped her life since Janice's murder. But as she learned more about Turner, about his long history of violence against women, about the sheer brutality of his crimes, her hope turned to anger, a burning rage that consumed her. Margaret vowed to be present at every court hearing, to stare into the eyes of the man accused of taking her daughter's life. She wanted him to see the pain he had caused, to understand the depth of his depravity. She wanted justice for Janice, for all of Turner's victims, and she refused to let their memories fade into obscurity. The trial, when it finally came, was a media spectacle. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Turner: DNA evidence linking him to multiple crime scenes, eyewitness accounts placing him in the vicinity of the murders, and even jailhouse informants who claimed Turner had confessed to the killings. The defense, meanwhile, argued that Turner was a victim of circumstance, a small-time crook wrongly accused of crimes he didn't commit. The prosecution, however, painted a chilling portrait of a cold-blooded killer. They presented evidence of Turner's modus operandi, approaching vulnerable women, often offering them drugs or money, before leading them to secluded locations where he would overpower and strangle them. The brutality of the murders, the lack of remorse, painted a picture of a man devoid of empathy, a predator who derived pleasure from inflicting pain. As the trial progressed, the weight of evidence against Turner became overwhelming. The jury, faced with the grim reality of his crimes, deliberated for only a few days before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts. In 2007, Chester Turner was sentenced to death. As the judge read out the sentence, a collective gasp filled the courtroom. For the families of the victims, it was a bittersweet victory. While nothing could bring back their loved ones, Turner's conviction brought a sense of closure, a measure of justice for the women whose lives he had so cruelly cut short. Outside the courtroom, Margaret Jacobs, surrounded by reporters and cameras, spoke for many when she said, "He may have taken their lives, but he will never take their spirits." Her words, filled with both grief and defiance, captured the resilience of the families, their determination to honor the memories of their loved ones by seeking justice. Turner, for his part, remained stoic throughout the trial, showing no remorse for his actions. The trial, while bringing a sense of closure, also exposed the systemic failures that had allowed Turner to operate for so long. In the years since Turner's conviction, the families of his victims have struggled to rebuild their lives. The scars of his crimes run deep, a constant reminder of the loved ones they lost and the justice system that failed them for so long. Yet amidst their grief, they have found strength in their shared experiences, forming support groups and advocating for improved victim services. The case of Chester Turner also had a profound impact on the LAPD, forcing the department to confront its own shortcomings. The investigation, hampered by a lack of resources and communication breakdowns, highlighted the need for better training and improved communication within the department and with the community it served. The legacy of Chester Turner, however, extends far beyond the courtroom and the police department. His crimes left an indelible mark on the city of Los Angeles, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most vibrant metropolis.
Dennis Rader. Sounds like an insurance salesman, right? Well, he was. Sold home security systems too. Ironic, huh? This is America, where even your boogeyman has a 401k. See, Rader wasn't some shadowy figure lurking in alleys. He was your neighbor, the guy at the grocery store, the president of your church council. Yep, this regular Joe had a side hustle: murder. For over a decade, he terrorized Wichita, Kansas as the BTK Strangler. Bind, torture, kill. Catchy, right? His calling card. Rader was meticulous in his madness, documenting everything. He even sent letters to the police, taunting them, playing this twisted game. Each murder, a macabre masterpiece he desperately wanted credit for. But behind the chilling acronym and the calculated cruelty was a man desperately craving attention. A man who craved the spotlight, who reveled in the fear he instilled. The thing is, fear is a powerful drug, and Rader was an addict. He was hooked on the control, the power, the feeling of being judge, jury, and executioner. Now, here's where it gets really freaky. Rader had a family, a wife, 2 kids, a dog named Shep. The typical American dream, except for the whole serial killer thing. He'd come home from a hard day's work, mow the lawn, maybe help the kids with their homework. You know, after a morning strangling someone. The man was living a double life, and he was damn good at it. His family and friends never suspected a thing. He blended in like a chameleon, a predator hiding in plain sight. It's enough to make you question your own sanity, your neighbors, maybe even that nice old lady who always brings cookies to the bake sale. But that's the thing about evil, it doesn't always wear a scary mask. Sometimes it wears a smile, a Boy Scout uniform, a name tag that says, "Hi, my name's Dennis." And that's what makes Rader so fascinating and so terrifying. He was the monster next door, the embodiment of our darkest fears. Rader wasn't your average psychopath. He was organized, meticulous, a real stickler for detail. Each murder was a carefully planned production, with Rader as the director, the star, and sadly the cleanup crew. He would stalk his victims, learn their routines, their habits, their weaknesses, then he'd strike. He preferred strangulation, usually with a rope or his bare hands. But it wasn't just about the kill, it was about the process. Rader was infamous for his knots. He'd tie his victims up in elaborate binds, a chilling testament to his twisted artistry. He'd often take souvenirs too, photos, jewelry, driver's licenses, but his favorite was underwear. Sick trophies from his twisted hunts. He'd relive his crimes, poring over the details, reveling in the fear he'd inflicted. His journals were filled with chilling accounts, grotesque mementos of a mind consumed by darkness. Rader's reign of terror started in 1974. His first victims, the Otero family, Joseph, Julie, and their 2 children, Josephine and Joseph Jr. He invaded their home, tied them up, and then mercilessly strangled each person to death. The brutality of the crime shocked Wichita to its core. Over the next few years, more victims followed. Shirley Vian, Nancy Fox, Catherine Bright. Each murder sent shockwaves through the city, each one a stark reminder that a predator was on the loose. The people of Wichita were living in fear, never knowing when or where BTK would strike next. But his murders were only receiving local attention. Rader wanted more. Rader seemed to relish the terror he inflicted. In 1974, He wrote the local paper asking, "How many people do I have to kill before I get a name in the paper or some national attention?" The following articles created a national panic. He'd often call the police after his murders, describing the gruesome details, his voice a chilling mix of pride and detachment. He toyed with the authorities, leaving clues, sending letters, and always staying one step ahead. But the national recognition was what he seemed to need. Then, silence. For years, BTK vanished. No murders, no letters, no taunting phone calls. The city of Wichita breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the fear lingered. Had he moved on, found another hunting ground? Or was he just biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to resurface? The answer came in 2004 when the local paper printed an article claiming that the lack of murders must be from the killer's death or imprisonment. 30 years after his first murders, BTK resurfaced. He sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle, a local newspaper, claiming responsibility for the unsolved murder of Vicky Wiggle back in 1986. The letter included chilling details only the killer could have known, along with photos of the crime scene and Vicky's driver's license. Wichita was thrust back into the grip of terror. The boogeyman was back, and this time he was playing with a new set of rules. The authorities knew they had to catch him, and fast. The game was afoot. BTK, emboldened by his return, continued to taunt the police. He sent more letters, each one a cryptic message, a puzzle for the authorities to solve. He craved attention, recognition. He wanted the world to know his name, to fear his power. The police were caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse. They followed every lead, analyzed every word, every letter, every symbol, desperate for a break. They knew they were dealing with a narcissist, a man who thrived on control and attention. They just needed to find a way to use that against him. The investigation intensified. The FBI was called in, profiles were created, and the city of Wichita held its breath once again. The question on everyone's mind: would they finally catch the elusive BTK? Remember how I said Rader was meticulous? Well, like most egotistical maniacs, he couldn't help but show off. He sent a message to the police asking if they would be able to trace his location from a floppy disk. In an enigmatic response in the paper, they claimed tracking him through the disk would be impossible. He probably thought he was being clever, a tech-savvy killer for the new millennium. Big mistake. See, technology can be a fickle mistress. It can be used for good, or, in Rader's case, for incredibly stupid evil. The police lied. They were able to trace the disk back to a computer at the Christ Lutheran Church. And guess who was the president of the church council? Bingo. They arrested Rader on February 25, 2005. Can you imagine the look on his face? He later made a statement that he was disappointed that the police lied to him. After all, he was Dennis Rader, upstanding citizen, master of knots, and, oh yeah, cold-blooded killer. With Rader behind bars, the truth poured out. He confessed to his crimes in chilling detail, seemingly relishing the opportunity to relive his dark deeds. He drew diagrams of his crimes, described his methods, and even expressed remorse for getting caught. The man who once instilled fear now evoked a strange mix of horror and dark humor. His ego, his need for control, it was all on full display during his trial. He seemed to revel in the attention, even using the courtroom as a stage to spin his twisted narratives. The judge, bless his soul, wasn't having any of it. He sentenced Rader to 10 consecutive life sentences, ensuring that this monster would never walk free again. Dennis Rader, a.k.a. the BTK Strangler, is now just another name in the annals of criminal history. Sometimes they hide in plain sight, masked by normalcy, blending in with the everyday. His story serves as a chilling reminder that monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. Wichita will never forget the terror Rader inflicted. The scars he left on the city run deep. But amidst the pain, there's a sense of resilience, a determination to move forward, to honor the victims, and to never forget the lessons learned from the dark chapter of the BTK killings. He emerged from the shadows, a phantom riding the rails. Angel Maturino Resendez, a name whispered with fear and dread. Known as the Railroad Killer, he became a chilling embodiment of nomadic terror. His hunting ground, the sprawling network of American, Mexican, and Canadian railroads. His prey, innocent souls living life on the fringes of society. Resendez was a drifter, a ghost moving from town to town, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. His crimes, brutal and senseless, terrorized communities across America. From the desolate plains of the Midwest to the humid bayous of the South, no place felt safe. The very symbol of American progress, the railroad became a corridor of fear. The nation held its breath. Who was this spectre haunting the rails? What drove him to commit such heinous acts? The questions lingered like the mournful cry of a distant train whistle, a chilling reminder that evil could strike anywhere, anytime. The hunt was on for the railroad killer, a race against time to stop a phantom before he could claim his next victim. Resendez's spree began quietly, almost unnoticed. Petty thefts and burglaries, small towns along the tracks. Then the violence escalated. His first known murders, a couple in Texas, their home near the railway, bludgeoned to death, their lives brutally extinguished. The killings continued, each more brazen than the last. A pattern emerged, homes near railroad tracks, victims often asleep in their beds. The brutality was shocking, the violence personal. Resendez didn't just kill, he seemed to savor the act, leaving a gruesome signature at each crime scene. Panic spread like wildfire. Communities living near rail lines were living on edge. Fear became a constant companion. Parents kept their children close, double-checking locks, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the railroad killer. The media frenzy intensified, newspapers splashed with gruesome headlines, fueling the public's fear and demanding answers. The nation was captivated and horrified, united in their terror of the phantom who rode the rails. Resendez was a master of disguise, blending seamlessly into the transient world of rail yards and homeless encampments. He hopped freight trains, traversing the country with ease, a ghost in the machine of American transit. This nomadic lifestyle made him difficult to track, a phantom disappearing as quickly as he appeared. His weapon of choice varied, a chilling testament to his brutality. A blunt object, a rock, a hammer, whatever was at hand became a tool of death. He often used items found at the crime scenes, adding a layer of chilling pragmatism to his madness. His crimes were crimes of opportunity, fueled by a dark impulse that seemed to lurk beneath the surface. There was a disturbing intimacy to his killings. He often lingered in the homes of his victims, eating their food, sleeping in their beds, and even placing their driver's licenses out to learn about their lives. This chilling detail spoke to a depravity that sent shivers down the spines of investigators. Who was this man who could commit such atrocities with such apparent ease? The answer, it seemed, lay buried in the depths of a disturbed mind. The small town of Lexington, Kentucky, became synonymous with the railroad killer's reign of terror. It was here that he committed one of his most horrific crimes, the brutal murder of the Johnson family. The family's home, nestled near the town's railway, became a scene of unimaginable horror. On a warm August night, Resendez struck. He bludgeoned Michael and Christopher Johnson to death, their bodies left lifeless in their beds. Their mother, Carolyn, was sexually assaulted and then brutally murdered with a sledgehammer. The details, splashed across newspapers nationwide, sent shockwaves through the nation. The murders of the Johnson family marked a turning point. The railroad killer was no longer a phantom, a figment of fear. He was real, and he was ruthless. The murders shook Lexington to its core, the quaint town forever scarred by the tragedy. The nation watched in horror, united in their grief and their growing fear of the man who haunted the rails. With the connections of the murders confirmed and the brutality of this most recent multiple homicide, the FBI placed him on America's most wanted list and posted his picture all across North America. Angel's sister Manuela, who had been curious how her brother was sending back so much jewelry and money, was concerned her brother would kill again. She contacted the local authorities in the US and, with the help of the FBI, set up a meeting with her brother. On July 12, 1999, Angel was arrested. As the evidence piled up, his trial became more gruesome with each count. In the end, Angel was sentenced to death. After years of failed appeals, on June 27, 2006, he was executed by lethal injection, bringing relief to all of the family members and towns living in terror along the railways.